Oh my.
I want you to show me.
Yeah. I have deep respect for that keyboard warrior. I'm sitting there just making fun of the wrinkle in my cheek or the wrinkle in my dress or the dress being too tight. Bring it, because hopefully it'll make me better. But it led us to the conversation at breakfast to talk about being your best self. And kind of the new thing is just being your most.
I like that. I like that topic.
Yeah.
Part of my journey has been about discovering what something called sovereignty or authenticity is. And I didn't really know what those kind of buzzwords even meant before. And so I think discussing what your best self or your most self is I think a topic rich for discovery.
Would you say your definitions of like being sovereign is your own individual right? Like,
yes,
okay.
I do. And the way it seems like we've been, I always like the word domesticated, but how we've been trained or how we've been
I've been
programmed.
trained.
And I don't say these things like disparagingly, at least right now, but I just simply say them to acknowledge that we have been programmed somehow by something or someone, right? And to acknowledge that programming is a way that we can then say, do I agree with this program? Would I choose this program for myself as a grown adult as opposed to a 1, 2, 3-year-old child? And I think
you are programming yourself every single day. You're reprogramming.
Exactly.
Your algorithms in whatever method that you go on social media, you are specifically setting the parameters to reprogram yourself. Now you got to make sure it's what you want to know.
No, for sure. And so, like I
be.
said, so the discovery of if I believe that being your authentic self is probably the best way to be. However, we've been taught that that's really maybe a little taboo to say. It's like, sit down, don't be hyperactive, be quiet, listen to the teacher. You have a question, raise your hand. You need to go to potty, raise your hand, get a pass. We've had to suppress all of our individuality to conform to the herd mentality. Even in society, there's all these rules that we have that we necessarily wouldn't have chosen for ourselves. But to be a good member of society, we need to comply. We need to be obedient. We need to forego our authenticity or our sovereignty for the good. And I say good because these things are worth discussing. Because what's good and what's bad and what's right and what's wrong, on a review of that.
I just screamed out and pooped myself because I didn't want to raise my hand to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. Then how can we kind of discover what our true authenticity is? We're these beings that have, dozens, maybe hundreds, if not thousands of different masks that we put on. And then we pretend that we are this role that we're playing. And as long as we understand that we're pretending that this is a role that we're playing and that we can lean into that role or lean out of that role, then having a sense of awareness allows us to determine if we would continue to choose that role for ourselves.
So by my definition, if you're trying to be authentic, don't you feel like you're putting like walls around, limiting what your possibility is?
I can see how that might seem that way, but how I view authenticity is one first must discover what their authenticity is. Now, if we simply just say, "Oh, I want to be authentic like that guy," okay, or I want to be like that basketball player, I want to be like that F1 Formula driver, I want to be like Brad Pitt, or whatever it is, and so and that's natural to say, oh, I have a role model. In the beginning, it's our parents, right? We pattern ourselves after the behaviors, the habits, the communication that our parents have, and we just simply mimic that. Authentic, I think in the beginning, we simply parrot ourselves after our parents. And then it's our teachers, and then it's maybe our Little League coaches, and then it's our high school teachers and our college professors. Sometimes it's, or like most kids, it's the cartoons that we see. We want to be He-Man, or we want to be She-Ra, or be G.I. Joe. And so this doesn't necessarily seem like a form of authenticity. However, it is a role that we kind of take on in the beginning. What I'm discussing is acknowledging that that's how we are programmed.
Yes.
We're like the old floppy disks that have to be, or just a disk drive, or even a thumb drive nowadays, that you put it in the computer and it has to be formatted, right? Yeah. And so these are like our formative years where we get the structure of how we then interact with society, right? And we get accolades, yes. If we do it right, if we conform, and we get kind of demerits if we don't. And so my point of saying that is that until we recognize what authenticity is, then we can't really strive for that. And to be fair, some people aren't interested in authenticity, and that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. I'm simply suggesting that what if people were more authentic and we learned to accept people for their authenticity and look at each 8 billion people as unique fractals or reflections of the infinite creator. And that can only be done if each person leans into their authenticity, as opposed to saying, oh, I want to be like Lady Gaga and she's awesome, but I want to be like her, but I don't want to be like me, right? And so the recognition and the stimulus to say, what do I want to be? And since we can be anything, we can then say, well, do I have some passions that really just kind of naturally that I gravitate towards? Do I have some ideas, some emotions, some physical, attributes that I want to kind of lean into? To me, that seems like a more natural way to be. And we don't have to be natural. I'm just simply saying, for me, it seems like trying to find a way to be more natural would be a better way to get into a flow state, because I don't have to pretend to be anything else other than what I am.
And that's why I kind of asked the question in regards to it being authentic is limiting, because yesterday you wanted to be out in the sun. Today you decided that you don't need the exposure. Like, you're living your life, and to put this parameter, like, you get to decide every day what that version of yourself is.
Sure.
And when we say the buzzwords are how it's used a lot right now, and the purpose of this I'm not a guru but is I lean into what people are saying is the better way of the human race. And I'm asking these really decent questions as into how does that affect your day-to-day life for your future?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm simply saying that if we can compare how we normally act and the masks that we wear for the roles that we play.
Yeah.
And if we're satisfied and or fulfilled in those roles, then there's no problem. Sometimes it's easier just to grab a template and say, I want to live this template. And then we say, I have so much joy being a rock star. I get to play music in front of fans, or I get to, shoot basketballs, or whatever it may be. I'm not saying that that's bad in any way. I'm simply saying that for me, it seems it would be easier to try to figure out what indeed would be my authentic contribution to myself and to humanity. And I don't necessarily see that as limiting. I see that as a way that to choose from the infinite variety of choices that we can get, as opposed to kind of a package deal, such as in order to be a good person, you have to be this. If you're a bad person, you do these things. And I say, I don't think it's that simple. I think that
it's not an authentic idea. You're reading stuff, you're watching stuff, you're seeing something, and you're trying to figure out your own personal individuality.
Yeah.
And whether you wake up one day and decide to dress in all black and wear black lipstick and dye your hair purple, like, you're trying to find your authentic self.
Yeah.
And that's where this buzzword comes into effect, where everyone's just trying to be the same. They're just being human.
No, exactly. So hey, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
If people want to be human, I'm all for that, because, like I said, there's an infinite number of an infinite variety of possible combinations that you can choose. And so I understand how people say, well, if the illusion that, if everybody was different, then it would just be chaos. And I disagree. I think there'd be diversified harmony, right? As opposed to kind of a manicured obedience to something. And so I think people have to sample reality, know the operating system that they're dealing with, and then they can understand that the possibility of aligning with something that allows them to feel passionate, allows them to feel the type of vibrations that they want, then they can then choose the things that resonate with their authenticity. And I'm simply using authenticity as another way to say your soul,
Find
or
your
your
joy,
spirit,
your
or your
excitement,
frequency.
yeah.
And usually it's one of
Yeah.
those things that it's like, hey, if you try a bunch of different things and a few of those things make you really joyful, then more than likely that aligns with your true authenticity. And if we're inhibited from trying a variety of different things, or if we're culled or corralled into a certain channel where we don't get to try the breadth of all the human experiences, then how could we be authentic, right? And in doing so, there may be some quote unquote liabilities that we'd say like, well, what happens if someone likes death metal, or doesn't like God, or likes cheese sauce and
Or
broccoli?
wants to drive 150 on a motorcycle down the highway, weaving in and out of traffic.
Yeah, or whatever it is. There are some potential effects of allowing people to be authentic, right? And I'm not saying that it's a panacea from how we live life now into allowing everybody to be authentic. But how do we then mitigate, or how do we then determine when it's okay to be authentic? I say just encourage people to be authentic, and recognize in someone, if they're doing something that makes their heart sing, then try to find a way to say, well, why do I have a problem with this?
Right.
Yeah.
Whenever you speak to someone, you'll, more honeys with thee. If you say, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Or if you say, I don't know if I'd try that. It's not that good.
Sure.
And so,
Or you simply say, try it, right?
Right.
Because it's like the hot stove analogy, right? It's like, don't touch the hot stove, don't touch the hot stove. And then the next thing you know, the only way they're going to realize is when they touch the hot stove, and they're like, ooh, I shouldn't touch the hot stove. Because it goes from belief, oh, my parents told me I shouldn't touch the stove because I might get burned.
Right.
And then until they do it, they're like, okay, now I know what they're talking about. And that's just kind of part of what they do.
Well, when the world is saying you need to find your authentic self, could you not say you are your authentic self every
For
day?
sure.
You make choices, whether it's joy or excitement or risk or reward, you are. So to continuously keep preaching authenticity.
Authenticity is not for
Things are
everybody,
simple.
right?
Things can be so simple.
Well, I would say sure. Then if they could be so simple, then why aren't they? Meaning that if people could just be their authentic self, but we then have to say, okay, is that true based on perception? Are people being authentic? And we'd have to say, no, the evidence shows that no, people are not being authentic. They're being replicas, carbon copies of other people. Now, that may be like if we want to try to lump people into groups like that, then yes, we could then say, oh no, of course they're living their authenticity. They're just an Oklahoma Thunders fan. Or no, of course they're living their authenticity. They're just a Justin Bieber fan. Either way, we could say that depending on how you look at it, if those things bring them joy, then that's probably part of who they are. Right. But if they're doing it to simply fit in because that's what culture says they need to do, then I simply have to question, is that being authentic? And I'm not saying that people should be authentic. I'm just simply saying, for me and my expression, I simply see that may be a better way to experience life in your own unique way, right? That's all I'm saying.
I think that's a good reason as into why we have I'm Not a Guru But.
Yeah.
Because here I am, and you truly care about how people are finding their authentic self.
Sure.
And I'm working on this aspect in a segment of your Eye-Opening Discussions to say, if they are being their authentic self, wonderful. If they're not, okay.
Yeah. That's wonderful too, right?
I'm like, you.
Yeah, so yes, to your point, it's like part of the eye-opening discussion is to simply say, if you are ready to question everything that you think that you know, why would I want to do that? Well, in order to discover what your true purpose and unleash your full potential is, then this is the right spot for you. That's the reason why we kind of thought of this, is to say it's not for everybody. To question everything or anything, quite frankly, is a challenge because it requires a harnessing of the will to say, I have a question with that, because we've been programmed to stay silent, to be quiet, to obey, to conform. And I'm not saying that's neither good or bad. I'm simply saying that conforming based on what somebody else has told you is right or wrong, and not being able to express your authenticity I say, well, how does that make you feel? How does that make you think? How does that make your body respond? And if you're ready to question why you think the way that you think, why you feel the way that you feel, why you do the things that you do, and if you are brave enough to do those things, then I know that on the other side of that is your discovery of your true purpose, and more importantly, unleashing your true potential. And that's why I get so excited about those things, because it's happened to me. And I can simply just describe that if people just are brave enough to just say, I have a question about this. And we say, oh, cool. What's the question? As opposed to, nope, sit down, be quiet. You can't ask that question. You're promoting misinformation. And so that gives me like a visceral response that I can say, hey, I have an idea. How about we just do this and let everybody kind of think and feel the way that they like, and then kind of sort it out that way. Let people learn from their mistakes. Let's put guardrails on so that people don't, but the over parenting by authority is part of some of the issues that we need to kind of grow beyond. Right?
I think exploration is necessary.
Yeah.
I also think we're in a world of confusion.
Yeah.
I think when you say that you need to find your authentic self, it causes a little bit of confusion because people are more focused on trying to see what that is and get that little nugget.
Sure.
And I'm Not a Guru is, as you say, you found this and you're on Eye-Opening Discussions. Well, this confused world can't get across this bridge. And I'm trying to bridge the gap on understanding that it doesn't have to be as complicated or as specifically judgmental of you haven't found what you're looking for.
No, I totally agree.
I'm not saying that's you. I'm saying like the world is like, you need to find this, you need to be this, you need to, do this. It's a programming on a whole different side.
Yeah, and I don't see it through the same lens that you do, which is great. That's why having these conversations allows us to see. I just see it through my distorted lens. And I say, well, I don't see a lot of that, of the world discussing or convincing or encouraging individuals to be authentic. I just don't see that. And so that's why I'm saying, hey, are we missing something in the mass push to conform, to be obedient for the greater good of society? We're losing the individual uniqueness of each fractal of the creator, right? If there's, each one of us is uniquely different, and instead of encouraging us to be the same, I would just simply suggest that maybe an alternative way, not a better way, but an alternative way would be to say, well, how can we discover what our uniqueness is, right? And that's on, I don't want someone who says we need to conform to be silenced or suppressed. I simply say, for those people who say you should conform, you should obey, I say, great. If that's how you feel, then spread that as far and wide as you can. I'm simply offering an alternative to that to say, I understand why people say that, and I honor their ability and their autonomy to make those type of decisions and to express their view for humanity. I'm simply saying, and in addition to that option, I just want to try to provide a separate option over here. That's all.
I think on our next episode, we should probably discuss belonging and love and it being the same.
Okay.
Because there is this disconnect where people that are elevating themselves are alone. And really, if you look at the language or you listen and feel and kind of see what's going on, people just want to feel accepted.
Sure.
Accepted, belonging, and love.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we can totally dive into.
I like that.
Because I think if we go back and kind of look at all of our friendly debates, it kind of comes down to that. If
I agree.
Someone can be their authentic self, and you're just kind of like, cool.
Yeah.
You do you. And you love them regardless, not, jeopardize your beliefs. It's only going to be better.
And, some people used to think that, love them was like an unconditional action that you take. As opposed like, well, I don't love that person because they do X, Y, or Z. Okay, fair enough. That's a certain type of love. But the way that I see it, I see that love is kind of this spectral type thing. And it can be unconditional, meaning that I love you because I love you. Not because you've done anything for me or to me or anything like that, but because I choose to express the frequency of love and support and caring and admiration. And not to say that everybody views love in the same way. Some people view it as transactional, like, I love them if they do this and I'll do this.
You can have conditional love.
That's what I'm saying.
Open and
that's what I'm saying. So I think that's a topic rich for conversation, belonging and love and what love is. I want to know what love is.
Oh my.
I want you to show me. That's good.
Fair enough. Well, then until next time.
Yeah. Well, again, I'd like to thank you for joining us on another episode of I'm Not a Guru, But. And next time, join us again as we discuss more insightful tidbits that make you say, Join us then.